Tom here from Lawrence Systems, and welcome to a Saturday live networking TrueNAS and other self-hosted Homelab Q&A. And, I had someone ask me this, and I said, I'll say it on the next video. And this is technically the next video, but I actually mean a recorded, prepared video. I had more, I think maybe 2 people now, and I don't know if this is good or bad. Say they wished I still said Tom from Lawrence Systems as I started out. I don't know. Is it just people like the nostalgia of older videos where I always said that because I just didn't know what to say, or I feel like people more gravitate to what I would describe like, proposing the question in the title of the video. I don't know. I tried different methods. There's a lot when you're a creator that you just don't know. And so I rely on feedback, and I actually listen to a lot of people, but you also have to be careful not to listen to too many people because you may lose your style. Because I've always liked the joke of advice is great until you get too much advice. And then everyone just tells you to make vanilla, and you realize there's already vanilla, and everyone doesn't really care for vanilla. They're looking for something other than vanilla. That's why they liked you. And you don't want to homogenize to the norm necessarily, or lose your style. But I don't know what my style is. And other than I still like teaching people about technology. And one of the other, I've always loved that statement. Nostalgia isn't what it used to be. that is so true. Anyways, my other reason, and I'll wait to see if anyone notices that there's anything different about the setup today, because I have been cleaning up and organizing my office. Matt sent me a few random things, and so I've been like, well, there's a keyboard difference here too. I can show this. I have to unplug it. I have a keyboard that was falling apart, so now I have one that's a little bit cooler. This is the RK Royal Kludge keyboard. Oh yeah, Cody noticed the new mic. So yes, new mic here. Plug this keyboard back in. There we go. The keyboard actually is wireless, but new mic. It's definitely something. Oh, I realize that's loose. All right. Sorry if that bothered anyone. I try not to ever touch the microphone, because especially some people are wearing headsets and they're like, no, don't touch it. And I don't blame them. I mean, of course, unless you're into the ASMR or whatever that's called, which I am completely not into. I just know it's a thing that people seem to enjoy or not enjoy. I don't know which it is. But the Q&A today, I threw TrueNAS in the mix because I'm playing with some TrueNAS stuff. Matter of fact, let me drag a few things over here. One of the things I'm going to be testing, and it's kind of what's in the video here or in the thumbnail. I'll show a better picture of it. It depends on how the stream goes and whether or not people have questions. Because when people don't have questions, I just start working on stuff. But I'm trying out some of these different cards, and this is in TrueNAS, and I'm going to be doing a dedicated video to this because all the testing won't be complete before then. But I want to show the differences if you're using in TrueNAS with ZFS. There's a lot of questions people have about, well, do I just go with one of these? You pop one of these high-speed NVMe consumer drives, or what about these Intel solid-state drives for using it as a slog drive? I'm trying to figure out the right way to describe it because it's not accurate to just call these a cache drive. A little more complicated than that. But, playing around with some of these and showing some performance differences between them, the different behaviors of it, I think it's a good topic. And what I'm doing to make this a little bit better in order to share is I'll set up a Phoronix system. You've probably heard of Phoronix testing. I've done it in several videos before. It's been a little while since I've covered it in video. And I actually wonder if I should cover a video on Phoronix itself, because it's kind of an interesting tool for getting these things done. Matter of fact, Phoronix Test Suite's been around for a long time. I really like the way Phoronix presents all the data, because what we want to do is, of course, do a setup get it set up exactly. For example, throw in the Western Digital Black NVMe, run it as a slog, see what the testing says, run the exact same gamut of tests and see if it performs that much different than the Intel. Because a lot of people are always wondering, well, what's the difference? And generally speaking, you're going to get a lot more performance out of the Intel systems. Any of the higher end drives have a better queue depth, the more professional ones, and they just perform substantially better. So there's kind of some fun I might do playing around with that, because I think it might be interesting results for any of that. And by the way, I have this email is active. Anyone that's wondering, the Homelab at lawrencesystems.com. It kind of goes in like a whole gamut where people will message me a bunch of times and I don't hear anyone for a week. It's actually a surprising thing. I always thought I'd be overwhelmed if I ever shared an email, and I was actually not that I'm asking for spam, but I'm actually a little bit underwhelmed at the people. I mean, not that it's just occasionally people want to reach out. I did have someone, for example, that told me some interesting things about the way they thought UniFi worked, and I couldn't validate it, but it was still interesting where someone was complaining about IPv6. Now I told them I was unable to reproduce it, and I don't know if I got to know if I emailed them back one more time to tell them. They were trying to tell me that the system ignored rules when using IPv6, but they didn't send me a write-up anywhere, so I wasn't able to figure out exactly what they were talking about. But those can be interesting because there's been times when I found bugs that are, I don't know, esoteric and unusual, and I'm always interested in those because edge cases matter. You know, the use case you have might be so unique, it only occurs under these circumstances, but those are valid circumstances. You're not doing something that's, you know, outside of a playbook. It's just a different setup that works better for your setup. But I see people saying, I love IPv6. I turn off IPv6, which should spark some comments and anger. I just, I got to find that article. Because I maybe I'll do a video on it so I can have my own dedicated rant on IPv6, where when people ask why, and it's just all the challenges with IPv6 that I don't see getting solved anytime soon. As a matter of fact, IPv6 adoption has mostly plateaued, and it's just from the business use case. I get the Homelab use case, but the business use case isn't there. So I don't have a problem with you using it in your Homelab, and I don't tell people not to, but the business use case really isn't there. And that's the thing. Well, I know it's 50%, but that's the whole point. It's been 50% for years. It's not like we're gaining every year a substantial more. That's the whole challenge, is it got to 50. And I think it's been at 50 for, let me find the graph here. Time. Someone had a really good graph they did. Steve Gibson covered this on Security Now, and that he was just talking about this. It's just this adoption plateau that we've really hit. Yeah, so let me share this tab. This is Google's information on it. So here's that 50% mark, but we were at 45 going back, and I think, let's see, we were continuously measuring availability of IP6 among Google users. But we were at 40% 3 years ago. And it's really just kind of plateauing off is the whole problem. And by the way, IPv6 has been around. It looks better if you look at how slow the adoption is. And there's flat lines in here where there's just no real growth. There's some growth here, but it goes back down. I think we're plateauing on it. There's not the business push for it. That was my kind of topic on this. Yeah, but there's no incentive for them to. That's my point. There's not a business incentive, and that's was the crux of it. Steve, I'm trying to remember which. I'll look up which Security Now's episode, because maybe I'll do a short video on it, because Steve Gibson was talking about it on Security Now, but it wasn't his write-up. It was another person talking about all the challenges that were very valid about why IPv6 adoption is so hard and why it's just kind of plateaued. Sorry. But that plateaued nature of it is where the issue is. And it's because they really make the case that there's not a good reason for businesses to use it. Matter of fact, there's a lot of expense without any gain from the businesses. And it's because we solved multi-domain hosting, years ago with SNI. So we've figured out how to host many websites with one IP address. And on the other side, NAT, I know it's a taboo word in the Homelab world, especially CGNAT. I get it. Everyone wants a public IP address, but the majority of people, which I think is unfortunate, I think we need more home labbers out there because that would incentivize it. But the average person doesn't really have a reason to use it. Like, they don't care if they're CGNAT. They care if the social media they want to get to works. You know what I mean? So there's not this driving force. There's not consumer demand because the average, not home lab consumer doesn't care. And the business is going, well, this costs more money. Where's my benefit? And away we go. Exactly. CGNAT has made it semi-pointless. As a matter of fact, there's no cost incentive at all. That's completely right. And the bearded IT dad works for an ISP. He's very familiar with this exact scenario and the problem with it. The other problem is attack surface. You have a higher attack surface, so you now have another reason not to do it. And what I mean by higher attack surface, and we learned this when we were doing some the hacking stuff that I was kind of working on with Matt and Jason, a couple of my friends, presentations we did, and we did a whole thing called, how I would hack you. But one of the things we talked about was the fact that if you're password spraying, it's rate limited by IP address, but you can get thousands of IPv6 addresses. And it turns out Microsoft rate limits by IPv6 the same way they do IPv4. So you can just rotate one at a time, thousands of IP addresses to guess passwords. Kind of an interesting way to do it. And it's becoming a more popular attack vector where, oh yeah, I'm going to block that IP for trying too many passwords because they're guessing. Well, all of a sudden, if I'm blocking IPv6 or not blocking it at all, for example, they can guess thousands because there's thousands of IP addresses available. So it's interesting. You're talking about an attack surface problem that you actually create. So yeah, it's a mess. Truer words have not been said. If porn required IPv6, it would have taken over already. I 100% believe that. So it's not gonna get off into that topic, but I think that statement absolutely is true. Who are ISPs and data centers buying IPv4 addresses from? Is you buy this? There's auctions for it. There's brokers for IPv6. Aaron is actually who manages it. So Aaron manages the IPv4, I believe. Oh, see, yeah. So if you're not familiar with it, and I won't get totally into the history, but there's waiting list page here right on Aaron. So Aaron experienced depletion of the IPv4 free pool on September of 2015. That's when we ran out. That's when we ran out of IP addresses. And yeah. We've been out of large blocks of IPv4 like freely available since 2015. And I remember everyone dooming and glooming telling me the world would come to an end back in 2015. But it didn't. So here we are. And it's still going. We still have internet. We're still on a live stream right now. So yeah, it's interesting. Building a new website. Decided to got my whole website. Awesome. Yeah, me and the bearded IT dad, when he was here, we talked about hosting your own website. It's not for the faint of heart. It requires a little bit of manual updates and some things like that. But yeah, that's absolutely my IPv4 brokerage is doing well. Oh yeah, Riley, my friend who owns HostiFi, he did a whole post about this. Is he bought a block of IPv4 addresses? So absolutely, it's a thing. Love the your IP address. Oh, well, not people who are watching that know my IP address. I'm not that worried about it. My IP address is not where I host anything. Worst case is someone will DDoS it. I'll change the MAC address, and I'll get a new IP address. Most of the reason for CGNAT is carrier grade NAT is a way for the carriers to use a IP range that doesn't overlap with anything you're doing, but still give them a way to privately address things. So, especially in the wireless ISP market, you see a lot of it because they want to have as many customers as possible, but giving every customer a public IP address not necessarily going to be uh, affordable for them. It's cheaper to have fewer numbers of IP addresses, a smaller block, and then they're going to use CGNAT to assign a group of IPs that are all private, as in not publicly routable IP addresses to all the customer equipment. So yeah, CGNAT is definitely a very popular solution, especially in the smaller carriers. If I'm not mistaken, Starlink uses it well. So yeah. Okay, so instead of you're doing see, I like that. You're doing the dishes while listening to Tom. I'm glad you're getting work done. Nonetheless, the good that you migrated the website. Tailscale works really good as a workaround for CGNAT for sure. Do you happen to know when MeekerTick will support OpenVPN with TLS so we can use Surfshark? No idea. I do not use any TP-Link or I'm sorry, any MeekerTick routers. I just I just never messed with them much. Um, I know they're somewhat popular, probably more so in Europe. So there are a few people, some YouTubers who have the Network Berg comes to mind. He's one of the YouTubers that's definitely done some videos on MeekerTick. I don't really. I might do some new videos on MeekerTick on just their switches. I like their switches. I don't care for their routers. But one of the things that I want to showcase, and I have, it turns out we had some laying around at my Toledo office. So I'm going to grab one of the MeekerTicks and I'll do a video about this where I just show how to set it up. And what I want to be is very transparent with like, it's not that you can't set up a MeekerTick, just this is what the interface looks like. And these are the extra steps compared to other routers. That is the thing I want to showcase pretty soon here is I want to walk through a VLAN setup across 3 different or maybe 4 different switch models. I think this will be a fun video because people don't realize even though all the switches can talk to each other, that's a standard. VLANs are well documented RFC. This is not anything obscure, and you can definitely pass VLANs between UniFi, a pfSense firewall if you want, down to a UniFi, down to a UniFi switch, down to a Cisco switch, over to a MeekerTick switch without any problems. But every interface for each one of these devices, and I'll throw a Cisco in the mix for fun, is absolutely different. And this is where the challenges come in with people is there's no standardization on how the interfaces should look. So even though we understand the networking and standards for moving that traffic, we don't have the common interface between them. So people go, oh, so it supports it, so it should be easy. And then they go play with the setup and they're like, oh man, this is awful. Ingenious is one of the companies I've reviewed before. And one of the problems I had with Ingenious, for example, was their documentation of how to do VLANs is wrong. And I did that video. It was kind of funny. I did the video and I told them before I released the video, I said, can you fix your documentation? Here's what needs to change in your documentation. They kept saying, we'll work on it. They never worked on it. And I said, okay, I'll just release the video. And I commented in the video, the documentation is wrong. But I showed the way to do it. And people thanked me for showing the way to do it. There's, it's funny. I get a lot of comments on one of my old videos. Which one is it? Because I guess that switch is still kicking around. What's the model here? It is the I think it's an old TP-Link switch. I did a video showing how to do VLANs on that, and it still gets a lot of comments of how it helps people. Where's that? Let me find it real quick. Yep, it's a TP-Link one. So let me pull up the video here. Wow, that's an old video. But what people were excited about is that I took the time to show how this works. This video's got it's 6 years. I guess 6 years is a long time in computer years, but everyone's excited because I showed people how to set up the VLANs on it. Because their documentation, I think, doesn't cover that. That's often the challenge you run into with a lot of these other switches. One of the reasons I suggest UniFi so much, UniFi makes it easy. So many big companies bought vast segments of the IP early on. Now they've worked out that they don't need public routable IPs for every printer. Then off them for big money. Yep. Any advice on how to set up Blue Team Lab? I guess I need more understanding of what you're trying to do. Tailscale is great for business. I don't know what you're talking about. There's a lot of businesses using Tailscale. It's great for Homelab too. Generally speaking, ISPs don't swap your public IP address unless there's a real reason to. You can keep the same public IP for a really long time. They just don't. It would be a breaking change or a tech support problem, so to speak, if they swapped your IP address a lot. I read that Norway are happy with the new VPN. Norway are not happy with the new VPN solutions. They ask companies to go back to IPsec. I have no idea. I have no context to answer that question. Oh, yes, this is the one with the shiny box. I don't know why that video has so many views. It's such it's weird seeing me from back then. I mean, there's the early days of Tom's YouTube. My little setup on a box. Some people say they want me to go back to the really old stuff, but I'm like, I don't know. It wasn't to me as well presented because I don't think this video needs to be 24 minutes long, but I don't know. I took over a large network with 5 VLANs, 48 Ruckus, HP, TP-Link, Arachnus, and Netgear. Slowly replacing UniFi, and boy, is it learning curve. Yeah, once you start playing with all the varieties of equipment, you'll realize there's like a concept that is similar between them, but that's where it stops. It's a concept. It kind of looks like this, but you also have to define things sometimes in multiple menus. Matter of fact, I think it's I don't know if it's a Cisco or the MikroTik that you have to spend a lot of time bouncing between menus before you have it all set up. That's why a lot of people like the command line, because you can define them faster on some of these from the command line. If you're going to combine switch brands, limit to 2 brands so you don't go crazy. ProCurve had a nice way to do the VLANs from the CLI. I remember using some ProCurve equipment years ago. We did a whole school. They all had ProCurve and everything was command line and sort all that out. It was a workable solution. That's been 11, 12 years ago. It's been a minute. The early days of Tom's YouTube. Yeah, it was fun. And I try to put a little more polish on it, but I don't know. You change a little. I have more knowledge to share now. I will say that the networking market has just changed a lot also. So people like, well, you don't do a lot of the old TP-Link stuff. And the TP-Link stuff, I mean, even then, one of the things in this particular video I commented on is the fact that I believe I showed that you could VLAN hop in this. I think the whole thing is how you could just get around all the alleged security in it. The thing was terrible on that. And that's probably one of the reasons I just quit reviewing some of those devices. I mean, I don't know. I guess I could go back to reviewing some of the old ones just to show people how, uh, you know, silly some of those things were. And attacks have only ramped up over the last 10 years. So security's become like an even hotter topic. I'd love you to join other YouTubers in the 10-inch mini rack challenge. Yeah, that's not something I'm necessarily doing, but Matt is. So yes, that's happening. This is going to be Matt's working on a video for this. He's got a little 3D printed mini rack lab with some Raspberry Pis. So that is a video that is coming. Hey, Tom, I watched your video about storage topologies. Could you briefly explain the best case scenario in a corporate use? Best case scenario, probably you're talking about where to put a NAS. I think the best case scenario is, putting a high speed NAS in there. If you're asking about the file scenario, like where do people store files? It's better to have all the files attached to a NAS, in my opinion, than it is to try to stuff them in a VM. If that's the question you're asking, that's the answer I have. I have a lot more gray hair now. There's no doubt about that. Ran into a bug where UniFi switches is that you can't configure a port and change the management at the same time. Yeah, I think there's some challenges of if you're not using VLAN 1, it's a little bit more challenging. It's not as big of a deal to use VLAN 1 on UniFi because UniFi works differently than the other switches. Tom actually did show his youngest kid as a baby when he started with YouTube. He is way bigger now. Yeah, I know. You got to figure my son's only 18. So I've been doing YouTube since around 2016. So 9 years, he was like 9 years old. So not exactly a baby, but 9 years ago is, especially at that age, kids grow a lot. So if I find one of go back a couple years. See, yeah, we don't have to go back too far. Let me find a picture of him. My son wanders in from time to time. It's funny just looking back how small he was not that long ago. See if I have a picture of him at my office. Somewhere. There. That's my son from early days of YouTube. This is like circa 2017, let me think. This was 2016 when I took this picture. But yeah. So it's been a while. I have a WireGuard VPN set up and Docker at my home. It allows me to connect from my office to my house. That way all the traffic to my home, specifically certain IP, I only want. Yeah, that's another way to do it. I want to switch from Unraid to Unraid from Proxmox. Any opinion on one or the other? Well, I don't use either, but I do hear a lot of people tell me Unraid and the way I guess you could call it an app market works is really convenient and really easy. So the community can probably help you out on that. And Unraid's got a long standing community in the Homelab market. It's a very popular Homelab solution. Many people cite its ease of use as the why. Is there a way to have a VPS show up as if it was on my local network without having to connect my home devices to a VPN tailscale? I don't know how a VPS without a VPN would work. So I don't understand the question. Generally speaking, if you want a VPS to have easy access from your home lab, a VPN is what you need to get it there. I mean, storage setup like NAS with a SAN connecting to the hypervisors or a fiber direct connect from NAS to the hypervisor. Generally speaking, like an enterprise storage setup, you're going to have a pair of switches that are set up with like MC lag for failover, and then you'll have your NAS device connected to the hypervisors through that switch. Matter of fact, there's generally numerous hypervisors or numerous hosts running the hypervisor software. So you have redundancy there, you have redundancy with MC lag and a couple switches, and then you have your SAN or NAS device. Maybe a grandchild then. Oh yeah, I've got 5 grandkids. So I'm running pfSense and TrueNAS scale on my home server. If I wanted to learn more about networking and potentially get into a networking job, where would I start learning for professional jobs? If you're looking for a career in networking, if you don't have access to the hardware, there are emulation tools. GNS3 is a really popular one to emulate some of that. You can spend some time in like Reddit R networking and see the challenges people are posting about and gain better understanding of it. But look for the different tools out there and go through some courses on getting your network certification. A lot of people recommend the Cisco one, not necessarily because you're going to be using Cisco, but Cisco is obviously very popular in the job market. But the Cisco certifications will make sure you have an understanding of networking. And even if you just did all the sample courses, you don't necessarily have to get certified. Obviously, some workers may require, some jobs may require it, but going through the courses, which you'll find a lot of them even on YouTube for free, will get you those fundamentals and go through those practice scenarios to really get a better understanding of it. No, my son doesn't actually work with me. I need to assign him some tasks. He's not as into technology as I am. Did you clean away videos, the first videos that did not correspond with the channel? Let me look. I got rid of some old content. Let's see if I still have any of it. Why is this thing so stupid? Yeah, so here's what I did do, and I'll pull one of these up just to show you why. So some of my really old videos were laptop repair. And this video is not really relevant anymore. I mean, this is a really old, this is from 11 years ago. This is a Toshiba laptop screen repair for an old model Toshiba that probably no one has. And I was just showing how it works. So I got rid of these videos. And the reason why is, and this came from other YouTubers that have done this much the same thing. The problem with some of the old videos is people watch some of your old stuff, especially if it's not relevant, and they go, "Oh, I wouldn't subscribe to this channel. This is really old." Not everybody looks for the newer stuff. So the first impression they have of you might be an 11-year-old video about a laptop that no one cares about. So I did leave some of the things up that are older. I got a lot of older videos out there, but I did get rid of some of the random, like how to repair this laptop screen and other videos that are irrelevant. The other videos that I got rid of as well were ones where I'm got a newer version that's way more relevant, especially because the interface changed. And that kind of sucks because you lose SEO position. So if you would search for like TrueNAS, I got rid of some of the old TrueNAS videos I had where they're just not relevant because that version shouldn't be used anymore. Version 9, I did videos on version 9. All I do is change them to unlisted. That way, if someone's embedded them somewhere, people still want to find a version 9 video of TrueNAS, they can play it. I don't care if they play it, but you should be watching the newer videos. So if there's a new version of the same video, I try to unlist the old one for relevancy. So you're not it makes it easier for people to find it, because ZFS replication has been around for a long time, but it looks a lot different in the latest version of TrueNAS than it did in the old one. So whenever I do a new video on ZFS replication, I unlist all the old ones. Why can't I figure out how to do Docker and TrueNAS scale? Always run into roadblock, it seems. Well, post in the forums, the TrueNAS forums. Yes. I am also trying to convince my son to work in IT. It is a challenge. The self-hosted podcast loves their Unraid sponsorship. Yep. How do you set up TrueNAS AD? Where do you control the permissions in TrueNAS or Active Directory? You will control all the permissions in Active Directory after that. You won't be messing with the permissions as much on the command line. Matter of fact, you'll be able to, once it's joined, right-click and do standard Active Directory permission things. Do you have the UNAS Pro? And have you tried the XCPG via NFS, noticing high 08 less in via NFS? I think so. I actually have this set up and under storage. Hold on, let me pull it up here. So yes, I do have. It's currently in maintenance mode. The UNAS Pro setup. I did it as a proof of concept. I think it makes a terrible NFS server. It's not a high performance server. It's a budget server. That's really it. It's budget, and it's a good feature. One of the features of it is the price. I said that in the review. I really like the UNAS Pro. I like the fact that it's a very cost-effective NAS that is great for file shares. I don't think it's at all a good idea to use it for an NFS system for storage targeting for things like, a Zen Orchestra or any hypervisor, Proxmox, whatever you're using. I don't think it's great for doing that. When you host your own UniFi controller, do you block communication to UniFi? No, I don't. If so, what about software updates? I want it to let me know when there's a new version available, so I don't want to block access to UniFi. I mean, if you wanted to block access, you would just have to check yourself manually to see when there's an update. I wonder if you remember a post I made in a forum about WireGuard setup to a VPS behind CGNAT. I add an extra line to the peer endpoint in your video. It works without it. Interesting. There may be some changes between some of the versions of like Debian where I don't think there's been any major WireGuard changes, but there may be some implementation differences. Oh, I do miss the blowing up the printer video, and also the video where you toast a motherboard with FreeNAS. Oh, I am doing that video again. That video still exists, my old one. I didn't take it down, but I'm definitely doing that video again. I was actually gathering some hardware today, and I want to do that. I want to blow up another computer that has TrueNAS on it to show you how it works. I almost thought about, but I don't want to destroy, because I like the little FrankenNAS one I built. I don't want to destroy that one. So I'm going to take an older PC. I think I have an older i7 or something floating around. I mean, it's like a first gen, and I'm going to use that one to wreck it, because I think it's going to be kind of fun. XOA at present does not, but their new version will support dark mode, but the present version does not. I spend 80% of my time setting up and fixing your Homelab, 20% actually working on projects in Azure. It's the complete opposite. How can I get the same ease of use and quick setup? What are you trying to do? I guess I can't really answer the question because I don't understand what you're trying to do. I spend very little time setting up my Homelab and much more time using it, but I've also created all the structures. For example, with XCP-ng, if I wanted to build a new virtual machine, I'll throw it in here real quick. Like today, I was actually doing this. So here's my Debian 12 lab. If I wanted to make another one of it, we just hit clone, and that just cloned it. And I'll just look for the clone, my new thing thing I am doing. And now I have a new clone of it. I can start doing my thing. So spinning up new VMs and all that is so easy once you build the foundation. As Zen Orchestra makes it really simple to clone, create templates, etc., and build new virtual machines kind of on the fly. So I don't spend a lot of time doing the infrastructure. Greetings. What are your thoughts and opinions on Vault Warden? I just set it up with and imported all of my passwords from my Firefox profile. I really like it so far, and exploring its access controls. I might take a closer look at it. I've always been, because I use Bitwarden. Bitwarden's awesome, and I like to support Bitwarden. So I have a paid subscription personally for it. I have a paid subscription for my business, and I have a paid subscription for my other business. I own 2 companies, and the CNWR, the IT services company, we also resell Bitwarden to our clients. So I like supporting the project, but I think Vault Warden's cool. And for Homelab use, I get it. You're looking for something lighter weight than self-hosting Bitwarden. I've done videos on how to self-host it. It's solid, but it's also a little bit more extensive than setting up Vault Warden. Vault Warden is much simpler to set up. And I've always just been a fan of supporting the main project, because Vault Warden doesn't exist if people don't give money to Bitwarden to keep writing code. But maybe I'll take a look at Vault Warden, because I think you can make the argument of I'm a home user who has like 2 people I'm working with, or 1 person I'm working with, and I just want to use Vault Warden. So maybe I'll take a look at it. I've never actually went through the setup process. I just know it's a different implementation of the back end of Bitwarden. So that's, and they're borrowing from Bitwarden's code to be able to do this. But I've kind of commented many times on this, like, as much as I'm a big open source advocate, I'm also an advocate for business models around open source, because open source is a development method. It's not a business model. And you have to get business models around there. And I see people just angry the fact that these developers want money. And it kind of drives me nuts, because what's the alternative? They don't make it open source at all. That's not ideal. I much prefer, as I believe everyone on this live stream right now, I think there's like 200 people here almost, and 188. And I bet you would all love to keep seeing open source software. So business models that kind of relate to open source software in any way I can support them. And it's not that much money to support Bitwarden. And I think the tool is great. Toast some SSDs with ZFS? Yes. I was at a computer recycler today, and I might grab some equipment from them, and it might be kind of fun to get some stuff that's like ready for being destroyed. Nothing high end. I don't want to destroy anything that's still useful. But I do want to make sure people understand what happens, or of course, what could potentially happen when you start destroying all these weird old drives. So absolutely, the TrueNAS torture test video is coming soon, because I think that is going to be a lot of fun. Tom, at what point do you bring in-house your own S3 type cloud storage for client backups using approximately 100 terabytes of Wasabi MS3 360 with a 2 gig fiber available? Any thoughts? Yes, we actually have it in-house. And the reason to bring it in-house is not about the volume of data. It's about your ability to manage it properly. My push all the time for people is, when you want to do this, when you go, hey, I'd really like to host this myself, no problem. I mean, whether it's 1 terabyte or 100 terabytes, what is your process for redundancy, resiliency, and managing it to keep it secure and up to date? Because there have been some flaws found in MinIO, and MinIO's patched them, so they've been on top of security. What's your plan to deal with that? Do you have a patch cycle that is only done quarterly? Because that's something some companies do. They only patch quarterly. That's not necessarily ideal when you have something public facing like backups. So there could be some challenges there. And if you don't have a plan to mitigate it, even if it's 200 terabytes, you are putting all of that data at risk. And so the plan is having a plan. That's the tipping point, when you're going to have a plan and you actually understand the cost, because you're not saving money. You're Well, and you might be, but you're changing where you're spending money. Instead of spending money with a cloud provider like Wasabi, Backblaze, or whoever, you have to then put those resources internally available to make sure those things are up to date. That's the tipping point, is when you've decided, committed, and have a process for that. Then you can do it. So it's not that I tell people not to self-host, but so many people go, I'm doing it to save money. Are you? How's that working out? Because we had last year, I think it was last year, I'm sure it was 2020, no, it might have been 2023. There was a giant, I mean, this company, they lost big time. They tried to self-host everything, had no plans to patch any of it. And the reason we know is because they called us when they were in the middle of a complete destruction incident from ransomware, and they realized there was so many unpatched things. The forensics team had no idea how the hackers got in, because they're like, there were so many opportunities. There's like, nothing is patched, everything's public facing. and they're like, and they don't use 2FA, and they reuse passwords everywhere. So because all the logs got destroyed, there wasn't a lot of evidence as to how they got in, but they were in, and they had a ransom note attached to all of it. Kind of sucked. What type of chassis do you prefer for mass storage and TrueNAS? I like 45 drives. I also like the IX Systems hardware. All depends on the use case. I wonder if you can create a video tutorial for Zen Orchestra installer and updater script. Also, you making videos about image for Zen Orchestra and GitHub. I have that video already. So you're in luck. That video already exists. I have a video of how to build. If you type in like how to build Zen Orchestra from sources, if you Google search it, I believe I'm the first result still. I started using Vault Warden after the last pass hack. That makes sense to me. Could you share what you have in your fresh RSS? I believe when did I update it last? This is from 14 days ago. So I'll throw this out there. It's in my forums. There's my fresh RSS from 14 days ago. It hasn't changed in 14 days. I'll just throw it out there. This is my current feed. There's a forum link for it. You can copy that file and import it into yours if you'd like. I have all my devices on a one network, a 192.168.1x. I want to split my Home Assistant IoT devices off into another network. I put my Home Assistant on 192.168 network and the IoT network of the IoT network. Okay. Yeah. Figuring out how you want the routing to do and how you want to set that up is not a bad idea. I'm not sure if there's a question in there you're asking. Free option of open source software is perfect to get people to know the product, try it at home, and not just a trial. I do understand the need to make money, and that free is limited options. Yeah. Oh, on-premise Exchange servers. What a mess those are. I've been running Security Union for a while in Homelab. It seems pretty capable. Do you have experience with the pro version and the support team? Also looking at Stamus, but pricey. I have had good interactions and talked to people who have used it. I've never used it myself. So I don't have any direct, like, hey, I've got this customer using it experience, but I know people in the security industry that sing its praises that really like it. And I've had conversations with Doug Burke and the team. They're very on the spot with things. So I've always had a great interaction with them, but I've never had to rely on them for support because I've never supported it commercially. But the people I know in the industry that have, like, they sing their praises of how good Doug and the team is for Security Union. But of course, that's anecdotal. I don't have any direct evidence, but I can tell you my interactions with him have been always very pleasant. And matter of fact, when I released a video on it, right away he messaged me when I released a video of like, hey, you made the like, you had this right here. Let me help you solve that problem you were having with the certificates. Like, they were, and I don't think it's just because I'm on YouTube talking about his product. I really get the impression he cares greatly about the product. Do you know the Google status of all 1,600 of your videos? I do not. And by the way, because I've removed videos at one time, if I were have not to remove videos, it'd be well over 2,000. But I know the search status for at least a few of them, but certainly not all of them. You made some very good points about Bitwarden versus Vault Warden. I'd be happy to pay for iOS and Android clients, enhance the user experience. I also like having the secrets in my LAN. Well, yeah, with self-hosting, that's a nice thing because you have it all there. I also like KeyPass I've suggested many times for people who's looking for one place to keep it. KeyPass is not bad. Obviously, there's a lot of convenience, though, of having it built into the browser where you can autofill all the sites. And that's where Bitwarden really excels, is being able to do that. I have a video talking about Security Onion, Wazoo, and Graylog all in one that kind of breaks down the differences. They're not all the same product. There's a crossover, if you will, between them, but they all work a little bit differently. VPN concentrator. Yeah, that would a term used more in the older days. I don't think hear that term as much, but it might be where you have dedicated VPN servers that were separate from the firewall, which is still a thing. That's not something that's dead. That's just if you're in a big enough enterprise, and let's say you have to have a VPN for 10,000 users, that's probably not on the firewall. That is a separate dedicated product. There's a lot of different product types you run into when you're dealing with extremely large scale enterprise companies. It gets a lot different. They might still exist in there, but for most part, the majority of people in the Homelab world that aren't in the enterprise space are going to find that the VPN is tied directly into the firewall. That's a very common setup. Can you recommend a good alternative security onion? What have you had a good experience with? I mean, it depends on the question you're asking here. Security Onion is an awesome tool for learning security. There's a reason we don't use it commercially, is because it's not easy to do managing all the businesses we do with Security Onion. Is it possible? Yeah, but the lift is too heavy unless you have a really good internal security and SOC team to manage all of it. So if you were to look for other alternatives in the open source space, Wazoo is an alternative, but Wazoo doesn't do everything Security Onion does. And I have that video where I break it down because they do a lot of similar things, but not all the same. But when it comes to the commercial software we use right now for SIEM, specifically SIEM management, we use a tool called Blumera. And by the way, if you're in the United States and any other, I think Australia and the United States are the two countries that Blumera supports right now. There might be a couple more. And you become a customer, you can very likely you'll end up with my wife as your account rep. We were using Blumera before my wife worked there, so there's obviously some bias. I like the company because my wife works there, but also I like the company, and that's how my wife got the job there, because I'm friends with the people at Blumera, and I've known them for a number. We've been using Blumera for a number of years, and my wife just celebrated her 1-year anniversary working there. But I always like to disclose, like, hey, Tom, doesn't your wife work for Blumera? Of course, I do. I do not hide that in any way at all. I like Bitwarden pricing for personal use. I did pay to support it, but I don't use the extra features. New to networking. Can VLAN communicate one way? Well, here's the thing about VLANs. VLANs are just a way to take, and maybe I need to do a newer video on this as a topic, because there's a lot of people, I've made the joke many times, the S in VLAN is for security. There's no S in VLAN. The VLAN itself is just a way to take a physical cable and share multiple subnets across it. So you build the security not at all with the VLAN. You're just creating multiple subnets. It's just easier to, when you have one cable between each of your devices that can split up the networks and carry multiple network segments across one cable. I mean, we could do things without VLANs and just use subnets and use a lot of switches. That would definitely be another solution. So all the security boundaries is done at the routing between the different subnets. Now, there is port security. If you were looking for, well, I want to be able to filter the MAC address and do port level security, that is possible on a lot of different devices. Usually not the question people are asking. Most of the time, though, you create a network and then you use the firewall to divide the rules between the different networks. So you control, like, I can talk to this network and I can get to that network, but that network can't get back to me. And those are the type of rules that will create your security boundaries. And generally speaking, that's done in a firewall, but yes, it can be done in certain switches that support that type of rules. The question was, where would I put my home assistant on the 192.168.1x network, or do I put the IoT network, and how do they talk to each other? For me, and this is the way I do it, and I don't see any problem with doing this at all. I have the Tom network, if you will. This is my network where my things live. And then we have the Homelab network, or not home network. We have the home network, which is I sometimes refer to as my not safe for work network, where lots of IoT devices live. Home Assistant is on my network. Home Assistant can reach out to the camera network. It can reach out to the other IoT networks I have. So Home Assistant can talk to the other devices, but the other devices aren't initiating the connection. So I think it's fine to have Home Assistant on whatever your main network where your computer lives. That's where I think Home Assistant should live. And then all those other random devices can be on different subnets, but you just have rules that allow you to get from where you are, that subnet, over to the other ones. I'm assuming you remade a bunch of videos and correct it. It's not as much to correct. I try to, I'm not saying I ever made a mistake in a video, but mostly it's because there's a new version. So a TrueNAS ZFS replication video, for example, is very different today than it was 6 or 7 years ago. So I'll just get rid of the old video and unlist it. And that's the biggest ones I do, is just, if the video is not relevant, the product is dead, the product is gone, it's just not supported anymore, or there's a new version of it, I'd remove the old one. That way, when people are searching, because YouTube frequently will favor that older video, unfortunately, and that's not always ideal. I've used Passbolt in the past. I worked with the IT team. We're using KeyPass after I installed Passbolt. They really liked it. Good option for self-hosting. I've heard of Passbolt. I've never really used it. How do you import XML? I believe you have to import it as I covered it in my Fresh RSS video, but I believe what you do is you copy it and save it as a OPML, and then you can import the OPML file. My Homelab doesn't do inter-VLAN routing because I want my firewall to be the main security boundary. Some things are directly connected to multiple VLANs, but they have host firewalls on some VLANs. Yes. I created VLAN for DMZ stuff on port forwarding. Do you have some kind of firewall rule to block traffic from one server to another inside of a DMZ? Well, if it's inside the same subnet and inside the DMZ, no, the firewall won't do anything to help that. Now, you may have switches that support port security. That's one way to do it. Generally speaking, where I have my servers set up, and when you set up your server network, you also take the time, and this shouldn't be overlooked, to set up firewall rules on the server. One of the ways I set up my wiki, for example, and a few other things, and I'm not hosting those anymore, but when I had those set up, one of the security boundaries I created was the wiki couldn't talk to the other servers on the network. As a matter of fact, all the other servers weren't even able to ping each other because I created pinhole firewall rules. You create a firewall rule on the server that says deny everything except these things. And the things it would allow is a jump box. Essentially, you figure out what your jump box is going to be, and that is where you allow access. So if someone popped any one of the servers, lateral movement between the servers, well, the servers are invisible to each other on the same network because I'm using not the firewall, but the firewall rules on each server. And all my servers run Linux, so you just use whatever, depending on the distribution that you're using, Ubuntu, Debian, etc., set up the firewall rules, and then set them up so only the services you need access to are available, and that's it. And matter of fact, unless there's ever a reason, which frequently there is not, for servers to talk to each other, the Invoice Ninja server that I used to self-host and the wiki, they didn't know about each other. So if someone were to get inside of either one, the two servers had no idea about each other. They couldn't ping each other. They couldn't even see web ports between each other. Matter of fact, because I was using a reverse proxy, the only port that the web interface could talk to was the reverse proxy. So if someone were to scan the network, they wouldn't even find ports open. They go, there's no servers replying. There's no ports open, because unless you ran the scanner from the jump box, it wasn't able to even talk to port 22 for SSH and management. Is it worth segmenting my network just between my switch and Wi-Fi access point? Making those different networks just totally a flat network topology right now. I mean, my Wi-Fi, I have a couple different Wi-Fi, and that works for what I'm doing. So let me pull it up. So if you were to look at the Wi-Fi setup for my own network right here, make it bigger so it's easier to read for people. But we have Tomland. There's all of 3 devices on here. Then we have Home Things. And all the Home Things is where everything else lives. And my network's been named Beer for pushing 20 years. If someone asks why it's Beer, I don't remember. I just know 20 years ago it's been Beer, and anyone who's ever come over has always had they joined my Beer network. Because can I have your Wi-Fi? Yes, it's the Beer network. PF since CE did any word from Netgate. Netgate has made no statement on it. They're still patching it. So there's still patches coming out for CE, and that's the thing. So they're still updating it. They're just not adding any new features. And I think that's bothered people, but they've kept up with the security, so it's not dead. So it's basically become, how would I say this? Maybe sunset. I don't know. If you're not adding new features, what does that mean? Now, there's still some updates going into 2.8. So they're still actively addressing the 2.8 stuff, but there's no release date even suggested. So I don't know if it'll ever be pushed to completion or what they're doing. So no official, I can't make any official statement because I'm not in any way partnered or affiliated with Netgate, but at least I keep an eye on their communications, and they're still pushing updates for the Netgate PF Sense Plus version. So the company is still around. They're still pushing updates, but yeah. Can I make 2 Zen orchestras to manage the same pool of XCP&G just in case one Zen orchestra dies in a counter problem? Yes. One-to-many relationship is perfectly fine. It will absolutely allow you to attach more than one to the same pool. You can actually attach like a lot of them if you want, but they will all work at the same time. What do you use to monitor your services? I have just been using Uptime Kuma. It's simple, it's easy, and it gets the job done. I use NetData for performance information. I think NetData is still by far, one of my favorite tools for doing that. So let me pull up, log into this, just in case anyone hasn't seen NetData. I haven't talked about it in a while. I've gotten some really confusing messages from people about NetData. Someone told me NetData was dead. And I'm like, I use it all the time. It gets updates all the time. So I'm having a hard time understanding how people tell me it's dead. So we'll pull up NetData real quick here. But NetData is alive and well, and I really like it on my TrueNAS. Matter of fact, like if I wanted to see, we're updating the view here real quick. Oh, there we go. Here's some, I want to investigate, for example, what happened here. I actually know what happened here, but you don't know what happened here. But if you're trying to figure out, well, what was my server doing? Is it having problems or anything like that? Well, NetData is a good job to go in, and we'll just zoom in right here. I was just doing a transfer, so you can see it's going slow, and then it's like, oh, look, all of a sudden we're pushing all kinds of data 4.5 gigs. I was running a backup because I was playing with some things and realized, oh, I should probably back this up ahead of time and set up another backup job using ZFS replication. But yeah, NetData is my monitoring tool. Uptime Kuma, easy, simple ping monitoring. Because if something quits replying to a ping, there's a problem. I should address that. I have a Windows 2022 data center server that I'm using with Intel X72 DA2 cards with RJ45 and want to swap RJ45 for fiber. Will swapping destroy the network team? I don't think Windows cares which physical you're using, whether you're using DAC or fiber or the RJ45 adapters. I don't think it cares. I don't use Windows as much, and usually when we set them up, we don't change them, but I'm pretty sure the answer to that's no. Generally speaking, that part is not what matters because the MAC address is going to still be based on the card. That's would obviously the MAC address changed, that'd be a different story. So swapping those out shouldn't be a big deal. Yeah, I just do drop rules, not reject. Drop. I don't need to tell people I'm rejecting, so just drop goes away. Could you go over a setup like where you restrict access to only communicate with reverse proxy? Maybe I'll do a video on that about hardening servers, but all you're doing is going to the firewall in there and saying, only talk to this IP address. Here's the IP of the reverse proxy. You can talk to the reverse proxy. That's it. Nothing else. It's not really a complicated setup, but maybe I'll do a bigger video about hardening servers. And that's just a piece of it, is why let lateral movement occur on your DMZ. Take all your servers on your DMZ and pinhole them. Say, here's my jump box. This is the IP of my jump box. That's the only thing you can talk to on port 22. So a scanning tool doesn't even find SSH open. And then your reverse proxy, wherever you're running that, well, just have it talk to that only and nothing else. The thing is, Netgate I don't know that Netgate's going to try and transition it because they already have their Tensor product, and Tensor supports Linux. It was built on Linux. So, yeah. The power line networking is still a thing. I don't think it's a great thing, but for some people who are just in a situation where you can't do anything else, yeah. I need to try NetData on Windows. I've never tried it. I don't know. We still don't use Proxmox, so I don't know if I'm going to do any Proxmox videos in the future or not. Maybe. Oh, would you say NetData is better than Grafana, or is it a matter of getting set up? NetData is far, far easier to set up than something like Grafana. Grafana isn't that it's not exactly comparing the same thing either. A video playing with vGPU and XCPNG, maybe. Not anytime soon. I just don't have any of those vGPUs. What do you think about the cost of HDDs? I have a RAID 5 4 terabyte drives, which I thought was expensive enough. Now they are full and have to consider replacing all the strategy for future expansion. I think that server, hold on. Is it? There we go. I'll pull up the site, make sure I get the site right. Server Part Deals. I bought hard drives from them. I have found them to be really good. It's serverpartdeals.com. I bought quite, and so is my friend Wendell from Level 1 Techs. We both have bought a lot of drives. Matter of fact, I have an upcoming video because we bought a bunch of those dual actuator drives and we put them in a system, and I'm going to do a video about it. I'm waiting till we have a lot of data on it because I didn't want to do the build video until I had actually ran some real data through it. So now that there's lots of usage on this, I think it's going to be a much more interesting video. Because you don't want to know if it works on day one. You want to know if it works after some testing on it. So let me see, where is that? Oh, This is the disk shelf with all of those in it. So this, I've got a whole video coming up on this, but this has all the dual actuator drives in there. There's 40 of them in that particular setup. Power line networking is terrible. And if you know any of the hams will hate it because of the EMI that active power lines emit. Yeah, they're definitely, yeah. Multiple XOs backups seem to stay with the one that created them. Well, not exactly. You can point them to the same backup remote, as it's called, the backup repository, and then both instances of XO can see it. It'll work fine. Does net data show what kind of traffic or just the bandwidth? It's mostly just going to show the bandwidth. It's not going to necessarily break. It'll break down like TCP, UDP, but it's not going to give you like, this is Netflix traffic or this is traffic that's going to some other website like Amazon. Appreciate the knowledge and insight. Thanks for the informative videos. Awesome. I'm really happy you enjoy them. Related to my question earlier, since Zen Orchestra can manage the same pool, can you create a video tutorial of having two Zen Orchestras behind HA proxy for redundancy? That won't work. It's not designed to do that way. You don't load balance them like that. So no, and it's a functional problem. They're not made to be load balanced like that because they just don't work that way. Is shortest answer. You're interacting with one of them or the other one, but not both of them at the same time. So you can't round robin the requests because that would get very confusing because they're going to be different instances. ZFS and dual actuators sound scary. I did a video on them, and the video, this is the result of the video, is getting these things set up. So these are, what's this company called? NetApp shelves. And so we bought some used NetApp shelves, and they're pretty cool. I think they're pretty neat for what we're doing here. Let me show you how they slide out because that part's pretty cool. Oh, I gotta figure. There we go. But yeah, this is how those shelves slide out. And you set all the drives in here. They're pretty neat, but I'll do a whole video on this because my goal is to make a video. I do plenty of videos on all the 45 drives and expensive things. And I get it. You're going, Tom, I just don't have a $150,000 budget like some of your clients. That's true. You may not. And therefore, I want to talk about alternatives you can do that are possibly affordable, where you can build high density performance storage without doing it at the expense that a business might. And I think there's really good reasons for building these. And by the way, there's a pair of these for redundancy. And it's still, this whole build process was pretty amazing because all the storage is very cost effective, while at the same time, actually working well and being a reliable solution. So that's the whole, goal of that video when I do it. I can't remember if those are 220 or not. So I'll have to look at them. I'm pretty sure they're only 120. I will have to double check that. That's my friend's rack. So I don't know every detail about it. I helped him I didn't plug it. He plugged it all in. I just helped him with the software. That's a good question. I've kind of let the channel chill out for a little while because I didn't have any new ideas to add to it. Maybe I'll do some. I don't know. It's figuring out more ideas for it and putting them together and not just going in circles. I felt we were going a little bit in circles. So I'd rather put no content out than content I don't like. Do you have a hard time finding good IT admins? Yes, everyone does. You close being finished on that train job? I think it was the cameras recording trains. Oh yes. All the train stuff's going to be great. There's going to be a lot to cover. My friend is, hold on. It's easier to show people. My friend's a little bit more than average into trains. So I'll be doing a video on this with my friend Mike, because he built an absolutely insane. There is I think I'm doing a whole video. I'm going to dive into this as a topic, but the train set, this is my friend Mike, who owns a company called Railstream. And the train set is insane that he's built. There's over 80,000 lines of code that runs this train set. It is wild. And I'm just going to like build a mini documentary about it because he's been building it for 14 years, I think is the timeline. So it's just going to be wild when I do the video on it. But more specifically, I will do a video on how Railstream works, because all the server equipment that takes to run Railstream is stuff that the Homelab people be interested in, because that's all that's storage for Railstream. That the terabytes and terabytes of data that go through that server is wild. I think I'm trying to find, I got another picture of the setup. Oh, I have a picture of me standing at the back of it. But yeah, I'm going to dive into how extensive Railstream's setup is from a technology standpoint. And I'm going to do a separate video of how crazy the train system is, because it's just super cool. And by the way, everything, when this gets set up, like this was still even in process. Anytime Mike changes something, he color codes every single cable, power cables, DAC cables, everything. It's just kind of one of those we're in the process of rebuilding it, and we keep adding more. So we're trying to figure out, it's almost at a stopping point where I can do the video, because it's just been one thing after another, but it's been a lot of fun to build. I just changed roles from a sysadmin to a junior DevOps. I feel like I'm an idiot every day. Any tips for getting over imposter syndrome? Hold on. I actually have a quote, and I really like this quote, and I hope it helps you like it helps me. Actually, it's, what is it called? Is called the Cult of Done Manifesto. And I'm going to pull it up here. Anyone who's facing imposter syndrome, this is a fun short read. It's not anything long. There's a TED talk. I'll throw a link here for people that like it. There's some tips in here that might make sense. But one particular line, this one here, I think this line I've told to so many people. Pretending you know what you're doing is almost the same as knowing what you're doing. So just accept that you know what you're doing, even if you don't, and then go do it. And that is sometimes just the way. I don't know an easy way to get over it, but I always kind of recited that line a lot because I think it's just fun and it helps. If you ever need some examples of how small MSP screws up stuff, I'm your guy. Yeah, that's always fun. That's all the learning process. Just check. They do require 200 volt power. So just an FYI. Yeah, that makes sense. Can't wait for that train stuff. How many cameras again? I don't remember the exact count of cameras, but I know there's, I think, 38 or 39 sites. And there's multiple cameras at each site. So I don't have a total count of cameras, but yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot. How do you or CNWR share knowledge internally? If you do it, does everyone just go external learning or on their own? We internally have a ton of knowledge-based articles, and I might be sharing one of them soon. Not that any of them are secrets. They're just not useful to everybody, but I might go through, like, how do I describe it here? We have a process by which we follow. For example, we just updated our process for choosing some of the on-prem BDR devices we have. And it's kind of a loose determination, but what this is a methodology by which our staff can go, all right, this client needs or has these requirements because they're at X size. And X size is loose because it's not even the size of the company. It's like, how much data do they have? So which BDR system do we have? Can we get away with putting a small BDR in? How would you set that up? What about a larger one? What about do we build them one of the R740 XDs with a whole lot of large HDDs in it? And then it might make sense to virtualize TrueNAS. And the videos I make, things like virtualizing TrueNAS, there's another reason for them. Some of those videos are also embedded in our internal documentation. So anything possible, I will share externally. I only can't just open up our knowledge base completely because a lot of it's very specific. Like it walks through, log into this site, log into this particular tool, and do these steps to get this configured, which is not relevant to you because unless you're using exactly the same tool stack I use, it's less relevant. So I always try to make my videos a little bit more generic so you can apply whatever tool you want to it. But I have no problem sharing any of the knowledge. But internally, we actually use, and I'll give a shout out to my friends here, completely not sponsored. But I do like them. So I am friends with the people who own it. I should charge them for giving them a shout out. If I, I'm not that petty. Or maybe I am. I don't know. Empath is, if you Google Empath, MSP, EMPATH, this is the learning platform we use to make sure people have gone through certain levels of training for different tooling, different documents. We have learning paths that we create at CNWR that we train staff on. And that's what this, you use a learning management system. I'm giving a shout out to my friends at Empath because that's the one we use, but they're obviously not the only one out there. And it works rather well. And if you do sign up for Empath, tell them Tom sent you. Look for the SOP or write the SOP. It's how I learn. Yep. The easiest way to banish procrastination is to put it off tomorrow. Psychologists did a bad thing to a positive, they turn into a positive, into a negative. That feeling when you aren't doing actually worked. It's a joy, not a misery. Yeah, I think people sometimes overthink it, but then people have always overthought it. It's good to discuss it because we all think a little different, and expressing how we think sometimes allows us to come up with better understandings of things. You talked about pfSense earlier. Do you think OpenSense will be a better alternative getting ready to set up my own router? I don't know. I haven't looked at OpenSense in a little while. I always found OpenSense a little bit more quirky and buggy than pfSense. That's why I never was a big fan. I've also found that OpenSense is a little bit slower on things like updates, which is also something I'm not a fan of because they were dragging behind on some of the like SSL security updates. I have a video I talked about that because people asked me so many questions, but I haven't really looked since I did that video probably 6 to 9 months ago if that has changed with OpenSense. I don't know. I don't have anything so egregious about it that you shouldn't use it. I just go into things eyes wide open that they've in the past had some problems. If I wanted to get started with AI on the Homelab, but wanted to spend 150 or less on a GPU, what would you recommend? That's a tough one. I happen to have a GTX 1070, and I talked about this on the Thursday, that I'm impressed with how well that works. And let me just Google real quick here. Actually, let me close some tabs before I start. There's way too many tabs open. All right. What does a GTX 1070 even go for? And I'm not particularly recommending this. There's probably better cards out there. And by the way, go over to Reddit and, there's a lot of people that will probably be able to talk about this. But if you're looking up like GTX 1070, they appear to be, this looks a lot like the one I have. I mean, this one's in the $90. So there's probably something better you can get because this also will not run large models. This will run some of your 8B models. And I should probably pull it up. So this might be an option, but go over on Reddit and there's people who are more knowledgeable than me about some of the other cards out there. I've been trying to get that information together, but it's a little fuzzy. But I mentioned I have the older card because one, it's an old gaming card that I had. I just didn't throw away. And I'm glad I didn't because it's works quite well for Olama. It's not amazing. It's not going to run your large models, but it runs quite well and you can learn quite a bit using it. How do you disseminate or do you disseminate life lessons? Hey, I had you do this obscure test, but here's why I didn't fix it normally. I don't know. I don't think I overthink that too much. I just kind of, I don't know. it's like right now you're making me think about it. So you have me pausing. You're watching the squirrel cage go really fast right now, but not have an answer. So I don't overthink it. That was probably my best answer. I don't usually fix things in obscure ways. I try to fix things in the most rational, manageable way. The only time I've had to fix things in maybe obscure ways is like, well, you don't have the thing that needs to be done to do this right. So let me grab some duct tape and we'll do it for now. And I'm going to, not solve your technical debt problem. I'm going to drag a wire across your floor and we'll plug into the wall over here until we can solve the problem that we want to solve. I mean, usually you're rationalizing on the fly when you're dealing with an emergency with a customer. I'm going to put a Band-Aid on something, but I will also be like, this is a Band-Aid. I've connected an extension cord to your server. That's not ideal. That is just what we had to do for now, because that literally happened. And kind of to walk through a scenario, let's say you have a client who has a roof leak that they discovered, and the roof leak specifically blows up the UPS system that was running everything, and then it shuts down the generator for the building. But the power's not out at the building. The power is only out in the server room, and the server room had dedicated plugs that went to this particular UPS and generator setup that exploded. And good news, servers are fine. Bad news, we're running extension cords to plugs in different areas to get the servers turned back on, because those plugs are all, they're not wet inside the server room. The water came on the other side where this equipment was. So it fried the equipment, but the servers were fine. So good news, servers are good. Bad news, we're running extension cords. And you just have to say, I'm going to replace these extension cords later. Uh, 1070, 2060, 2080. Remember, all got thrashed by mining. Oh yeah, many of these, if you find them used on eBay, you're going to find that they were using for mining. I don't know if that's better or worse than the fact that like that card that I had, that was my son's gaming card for a while. So he thrashed it as well, because he plays games a lot. He obviously isn't going to, work it as hard as a 24/7 Bitcoin miner, but hey, yeah. A Homelab for, are you saying high availability or Home Assistant? Docker stuff, what hardware do you recommend? I mean, if you're asking for high availability, Docker Swarm is something I plan to do some future videos on. You'll find a few people. My friend Raid Owl has done a video on Docker Swarm. It's pretty cool. And it's a good way to set up. By the way, you can run Docker Swarm on a group of Raspberry Pis. That makes them pretty affordable. Yeah, OpenSense updates for the sake of updating. That's a big thing about OpenSense. There's a ton of updates, and sometimes they're breaking changes. Oh, the temporary permanent fix. Yes, that's a problem. Add extra line to the invoice. Bucket installation. Yep. I know there's been a lot of support added for non NVIDIA cards. I believe Wendell did a video for it. I am going to look into this a little bit more myself, because I'm playing around, because as I mentioned, I had my son's old gaming card that I'm using now, the 1070, but I wouldn't mind knowing what other cards would work and being able to like test them and do some comparison. So that is on my to-do list. I just don't know exactly which ones are the best supported for that. One of the things with Home Assistant, and let me, I need to do some update. So I had Matt do the Home Assistant getting started video, but I will do some, the whole reason for doing that is so I can go do some more. And they have right on their website here, some getting started with Home Assistant. I really think their equipment is solid. I like the fact that you can DIY it on Raspberry Pi. And if you have Raspberry Pi, awesome. But if you're going, hey, I want to buy something, well, they have their own. And I think it's kind of cool to get one of their systems, because I think they're reasonably priced. And the green one, I mean, buy now. What does it even cost for this one? I'm going to pull it up on Amazon just for reference. Oh, currently unavailable. That's not helpful at all. So the Home Assistant Green is like $99 right now. That seems pretty reasonable. Look around because there's a couple extra options you can get with it. But yeah, if you start with their hardware, not a bad thing. Just finish your Proxmox, HA. Awesome. Any personal favorite hosted apps or services? I don't know. I'm kind of boring on that side of it. What am I even hosting right now in here? I'll pull up something. What's in my Portainer? Tom's list of what he's hosting is pretty small right now. Like I like Chasm. I use Chasm. I've talked about that before. I've got a whole video on Chasm. I have Rust Desk and Olama Open Web UI, which is the front end for Olama, a web front end for it. So there's really not a whole lot of things. I don't know. I don't like when I'm not doing, because I do this for a living. You know, I'm a IT consultant and designer, architect, etc. You know, I'm helping companies design solutions. Then when I'm not doing that, I play some games now. I actually, by the way, I got into gaming a little bit more, so I've been doing that. But I spend a lot of time away from the computer when I'm done. When I'm not editing videos and I'm not doing things related directly to my job, or YouTube is somewhat indirectly. I don't have a ton of apps I'm self-hosting, but I'm trying to change that. I'm looking into more things. So there's that. Actually, I'm going to take a break here in a second as I'm out of water. I've got Pi-hole, UDM, home network. Would a firewall be worth it, or is it redundant? It's redundant. If you already have a UniFi Dream Machine as your firewall, then yeah, it's redundant at that point. I'm using just a UniFi. I don't have a pfSense at my studio here. We have pfSense at many clients, and at our 2 other labs we have. Big problem I see with Intel cards is where are they going with the new CEO? What about updates? I have no idea. You need GPU with as much VRAM as you can get for your home AI setup, which makes it harder to find an affordable graphics card. This is very true. Have you seen the self-hosting site and newsletter that DB Tech talks about? Not sure if I can share a link. Yeah, there's like the self-hosted newsletter. I think I subscribe to it. I have a whole bucket. I subscribe to newsletters and forget I subscribe to them and throw them in a bucket. I generally keep things in my RSS feeds. Yeah. Oh, that is on my list, is Audio Bookshelf. I was looking at that one and go, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I'd like to have that in there because I believe it does podcasts and books. So I was like, this is cool. I like books. I like podcasts. That is definitely one of the things I'm looking at. As I'm building my list right now of what do I want to self-host and setting it all up, and hopefully I'll have that list. I'll share a list with all of you soon. Fresh RSS. I should have mentioned that because someone asked me about my Fresh RSS feed earlier, and Fresh RSS is still something I self-host. I love Fresh RSS. That's the only way I read the news on all this stuff. But what I'm going to do now, where is my be right back? There's my be right back. I just need to get some water, and I'll be right back. There we go. And I'm back. If you had to pick only one app for self-host, would that likely be Jellyfin? I'm using MB. I was going to use Jellyfin, but I don't remember why, because this goes back a number of years. Like I tried MB, it worked, and I stopped looking for another app. So, but I know Jellyfin's really popular. I don't have a reason not to use Jellyfin other than ain't broke, don't fix it. And my current ain't broke, don't fix it situation is MB works. You know, I could probably look up or Google some of the other cards that work really well with some of the AI stuff. I'm trying to look. I'm actually surprised how cheap some of these NVIDIA GeForce ones are because I'm surprised how fast they work. So if we went to the I wonder if I can ask the AI system which is the best one to use. That would be fun. Plex is now charging for remote access. Yeah, I seen that as a headline. I don't know much. I don't have a lot of answers why Plex is doing it or what the changes they're making. Do you have any experience setting up WAN failover with LTE modem, trying to do it with OpenWRT and keep getting confused? Usually, I'm going to do it with not necessarily, well, it's definitely not OpenWRTs. I don't use that, but you're going to set that up with like a device that supplies WAN to the secondary port. That's a real common way to do it. So we do have some of those set up. I think we're using Cradlepoint for those. I think that's one of the popular tools we use or popular devices. I'm not an expert at it. So it's actually, I would say definitely I'm not the field of expertise. Many of the clients that I have set up in the past have been, they just have dual connections to different ISPs. And matter of fact, in some of the rural clients, the popular solution has been Starlink. Starlink does work for that. Yeah, I have the lifetime Plex Pass still. Can you show how to install TrueNAS apps? How to set up the app storage and apps. Good news, I've got that video. If you look up my TrueNAS apps video, I've covered that, and I have a tutorial on that exact topic. I've also covered, and well, I should say, I'm not going to waste my time covering any of the stuff about Nextcloud, because I just tell people, don't run Nextcloud on TrueNAS. It explodes on update. It seems to be the most problematic app on TrueNAS is definitely Nextcloud. Just if you're thinking about running Nextcloud, just run it in a Docker container unrelated to TrueNAS. Your life will be easier. I'm not actively using Ollama on here, but I do have Ollama set up. I have tailscale set up because I have some upcoming videos that I'll be doing with tailscale. It's not that difficult to use tailscale on here. My old video is still relevant, but when you set up tailscale, it no longer shows up in the networking. That's the only change from my older video, but you don't really need it to do things like replication or control your TrueNAS over tailscale. I've also done a video on how permissions work inside of TrueNAS, so that's also completely relevant video that I've done recently. I was testing on TrueNAS and it seemed fine. I'll look at moving it over. Yeah, I will say that tailscale is perfectly fine on TrueNAS. I haven't found any problems with it. I set up a ZFS replication task. I made it punch through different firewalls, and every time it seemed to transfer very reliably. Yeah, TrueNAS has become so much better now they got rid of Kubernetes. Kubernetes was just a mess on TrueNAS and not great. So when they got rid of Kubernetes, it became substantially better. Their app ecosystem has become very big. They've done a nice job with all the extra apps they put in here. They're always adding new ones too. Oh, that's interesting. Never even heard of this one. I like when I go here and there's like another app. I'm like, oh, look, this is neat. They have some new indexing app on here. So discover new and updated apps. People really like Photo Prism. I've not used it. What's the other photo one that everyone likes so much? It's probably going to be under filter for. Is there a category? Here we go. It's going to be under media. So there's Audio Bookshelf. I want to try setting this up under TrueNAS because I like to see how it would work on here. Calibre, Castapod, an open source hosting platform made for podcasters who engage and interact with the audience. Very cool. Deluge, Handbrake, Image. This is the one everyone asked about. I have not used Image. I believe my friend who runs a YouTube channel called Jim's Garage has done a video on Jacket. I think I seen that in one of his titles. I did not watch it. So once again, it's more of these that are available. There's a lot of cool things that are available in here. Sonar, transmission, tiny media manager. I'm a huge fan, though, of SyncThing. Whoops. Which is in here. Oh, did I spell sync? SyncThing. Our sync is in here. This is broken. This is the problem I usually have. The Nextcloud one is just problematic. You ever try to host volumes over NFS? Never seems to go well for me. We have clients using it. I've done it with Graylog quite a bit, so I've never had a problem with it on Graylog. Oh, by the way, matter of fact, here's one for you. If we were to, and let's go ahead and log into this. So let's find my. So my Olama models, what you're seeing here is mount Olama models right in the middle here. I have all my Olama stuff set up, and then I mount the models somewhere else because I would be a hypocrite if I didn't design storage the way I tell people to design it. So my disk is rather small for this Olama setup. It's a larger disk, but it's not using much here. So there's like an 80 gig disk, but if you look at the stats, we're not using much disk at all. So there's, the entire thing is only 10 gigs. But then we have the Olama models, and there's a lot more data in here. And that's, it's just one of those ways. Anytime I download a new model, I just go ahead and let it download to the NFS mount. While you're here, is there a way to snapshot the AX applications volume? It's not really exposed to the user. You could do it from the command line, but yeah, I don't know why they do it that way. So officially through the UI, no, but you can do it from the command line. TrueNAS in a VM. I just did a video on that. So yes, provided you meet the terms and conditions and circumstances that I mentioned in there. So you can do it. But one of my challenges I don't know where you're at in your Homelab or networking journey. I have a lot of people that go, I'm not really familiar with virtualization. I want to start learning TrueNAS. I'm going to virtualize TrueNAS. Well, it's a great way to learn. You're going to run into some challenges, but as long as you're allowing the ZFS system, TrueNAS uses ZFS as the file system, to be able to access the drives directly, you're going to have a good experience, or should have a better experience. If you do not do this, you're not going to have a good experience. If you try to virtualize the drives, you're going to have problems, and it's not going to work well. Frigate with Coral USB, Image Jacket, Kavita, Comga, Sync Thing, all running on TrueNAS. Awesome. I know a lot of people like Frigate. I just haven't taken the time and don't really have a strong need to, but I have friends that run it. Many other channels talk about it. I just don't use it enough. So if I did a video about it, it would be disingenuous because I'm not actually using it. If I start using it, I'll do a video on it. That's a lot of how things go for me. Is I don't always do videos on things I just don't use at all because I'm not as good at it. And if I just learn it to do the video, I'm not going to do it as good a job. Versus when I talk about things like UniFi, or I talk about things like TrueNAS. We run TrueNAS commercially at very large companies, and I run TrueNAS for all of my video editing and all my lab stuff. So TrueNAS is something we absolutely, I say we because I'm talking about CNWR, the IT services company. We use a lot of TrueNAS commercially. So I talk about TrueNAS a lot. Same thing with XCP&G. We have a lot of businesses running XCP&G. I'm doing consulting on a lot of XCP&G installs for large companies. Therefore, when I talk about it from the stance of something I actually use. One of the things I'll really encourage people to do, though, is, and we'll go back over to here, zoom in a little bit. Things that even a locally hosted, this is the Llama 3 8B model that I'm using right here. So this is not one of the largest ones, but the Llama 3B is actually a pretty good language model. I have a couple other ones in here. I have the Granite Code model as well, which is a 3B, smaller model, but really fast. And both of these are reasonably good at answering questions like this. So if you wanted to explain, I'm typing words wrong. EXPLAN how to set up a VLAN on a HP ProCurve from the command line. Maybe you have one of these. Matter of fact, it'll walk you through the commands. And this is, to me, a very reasonable thing to use in your Homelab to be able to get a lot of questions on there. And it isn't going to be absolutely 100% right all the time. But I think it's a very handy way to kind of start with things. Because let's go ahead and modify that question. How to set up a VLAN on a MikroTik. So now we're going to explain this one. Prerequisites, you've got a MikroTik with OS 6.x higher, SSH in, and it walks you through how to set up a VLAN on one of those switches. These are things that might do a video on. It's just like some tips and tricks for querying a locally hosted ones. I did, Matt did the video on how to get started with it, but it's kind of convenient to be able to ask some of the questions. How do I snapshot create? Let's see, maybe how best way to phrase it. How do I create a snapshot from the command line in ZFS for a data set? Because someone just asked us earlier, like, well, can you do it through the UI? No. How can you do it from the command line? So sudo ZFS snapshot -- read only and the data set at snapshot name. And now you're talking about how to do it. And then it shows you also how to delete it. So you can use this for kind of a command reference. It works a lot. Ask a Ruskus. Well, here's one of the challenges, and you have to think about this when you're dealing with these. It gets a lot wrong for companies that don't have big repositories of public data for it to be trained on. So companies that don't have a lot of publicly available data that these large models were trained on, they're not going to have great answers. So Linux commands, there's tons of public documentation. So it does Linux, it does ZFS, it does many of the open source products that many of the Homelab people run very well. Now, Cisco's been around a long time. There's plenty of forums that people have posted Cisco commands in. So it knows Cisco commands pretty well. Once you start getting into some of the other ones, it may not be as good. If there's not a lot of good Google searches you can do that even land on pages for those companies, yeah. And some companies, their choice was to put their documentation behind like paywalls that you had to be like a subscribed member to be able to have access to their forums. And that means the LLMs never got a chance to do it. RAID is not a backup. I bought that shirt and backups need to be tested. Yes. Can you actually recover data from a backup? Untested backups are just wishful thinking. Llamas are also great, asking why you wouldn't do something likewise. Like why I would want snap. Also great for asking why you would want to do something. Like why would you want to do a snapshot? You reached out to CNWR and tried to engage a conversation about your company project to migrate VMware XCPG. The experience was negative. I don't understand why the experience was negative. Are you saying the experience with me was negative? Because I'm often the one who gets assigned that. So you can email me directly. If you email homelab@lawrencesystems.com, I will address whatever it is that you're having a problem with. I don't hide from anyone. And generally, like I said, most of the time, a lot of those get assigned to me. So let me know. You should look into MCP, Model Context Protocol. It's an API for AI models to use the tools and external sources. That's interesting. Paywall for firmware documentation should be illegal. Nah, it's the way these proprietary companies work. It's their loss. But it is what I wish they wouldn't do it. I think it's a terrible idea. I think all the documentation should be public. Why not? It helps sell your product. Anytime I run into a company like that has it, my advice to them is always like create as much public documentation as possible. Rebuilding my TrueNAS. Should I go bare metal or Proxmox VM? I mentioned in my video that I just did the other day about virtualizing TrueNAS. You can. It is a working solution, and it can be some hardware consolidation, but it can also be some of the headaches that you run into because you're virtualizing it. And then you have the chicken and egg problem if you wanted to virtualize it in Proxmox, but then also build your VMs in Proxmox to use the TrueNAS for storage. Not that you can't, you just got to make sure you have the start order correct. So you say boot up Proxmox, boot up TrueNAS, then I can boot up other virtual machines that need that. But if TrueNAS boots up late or has some problem, or you have to reboot your hypervisor, now you can't necessarily move them because you have the TrueNAS attached directly to that Proxmox. So yeah. Yeah, there's kind of some challenges in doing it. As long as you're aware of those challenges and you've kind of thought them through, it's not that it doesn't work. It just creates those extra challenges. You wish TrueNAS left add-ons alone. I don't understand that as a question. Like, you wish it didn't have add-ons? Those are actually, here's a weird one that I just don't understand. People were telling me they don't want to use TrueNAS because they don't like the way they're moving to the, I think it's called, I can't remember the name of the tool, but it's the instances that are in TrueNAS. So some people were commenting they don't want to use TrueNAS because of that. On my TrueNAS 25 video, they want to use something else that doesn't have those features. And I'm like, well, just don't use the features. If you don't like the features in TrueNAS, it's a really solid system. Not that I'm telling everyone that you have to use TrueNAS. I actually don't like monoculture. I like when people use a diverse array of things, but I just find it kind of unusual that when people were complaining about the instances, which are marked experimental, that their complaint was, well, I don't like the way they're doing it, so I'm not going to use TrueNAS anymore. And I'm like, well, there's a reason I don't have on any of my systems a bunch of VMs running in TrueNAS, because their previous system wasn't great. Their new system might be better, but overall, I don't think TrueNAS is a great virtualization platform. It's definitely a NAS first. I have never used Coolify or Daku, so I don't have any answers to what makes them better or worse than Portainer. I barely use Portainer. I actually like managing Docker from the command line. I feel more in control. But of course, Portainer does do a nice job of presenting things when you want to look at some of your containers and look at the stack or get a status, or for example, especially when you look at the volumes, I think that Portainer can make that really, especially networking. If you have a lot of networking, and it can be kind of interesting to look at it from Portainer when you're looking at the bridge versus host networking, etc. So I don't know. I'm mixed on it. Sometimes Portainer's helpful. Other times, I don't know. But I haven't tried those other ones. If you back up your TrueNAS VM through Proxmox because it tries to back up TrueNAS data sets. Yeah, tries through Proxmox because then it tries to back up the TrueNAS data sets. Yeah, it depends on how you're setting it up. And if you're doing, hardware pasture, which is the recommended way I would do it, so you're passing the drives directly through to TrueNAS through the hypervisor. That was why I made that video, because that comes up a lot. What games have I been playing? Oh, man. So only because my kids have decided I should play it with them. I was playing Dead by Daylight, and that was kind of fun. So what else was I playing? Oh, I bought, because it was on the Steam sale, the old OG Command and Conquer. I just wanted to replay a game from forever ago that I used to play. So I've been going through that. And I bought a gaming laptop though, and I actually encourage people. Let me see if I can share my Steam game. So my name on Steam, I think, is just, I don't view my profile. Oh, perfect. Easy to find me. So I will throw this in there. Anyone that wants to friend me on Steam, I'm slowly getting back into gaming. I bought a gaming laptop and things like that. So I'll throw that in here. I'm just Lawrence Systems on Steam. Homelabbers are weak and are easily drawn to new shiny features. I think that's the point of a home lab. I want to play with all the things. Oh, I guess this is fun. Ghost, I just started playing this. I only got an hour and a half into it. This is cool. The Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut. I'm only 2 hours with Command and Conquer. Dead by Late, 1.5 hours. I was playing this just the other day. Me and the wife been playing a couple games too, so I won't be online gaming tonight, but my wife is going to be traveling, so I'll be right back on the gaming. What game do I have the most on here? I don't know. I don't know how, please be warned. I'm kind of a moron when it comes to how Steam works. So bear with me if I get confused on some of it. When Marge first dangled the keys in front of Homer. Yes. So Coolify is just Docker under the hood. Okay, someone's explaining it a little better then. So these are just more add-ons in it. Yeah. What is the best backup tool in TrueNAS for Windows overall, VM, or not? I would say there is no good backup tool. If there is one in TrueNAS, I'm unaware of it. The reason I use Synology for my Windows backups is because it's a better solution than anything I found in TrueNAS. Yeah, I don't have a better answer than that. Ooh, this is a tricky one. I will admit, I am a Synology fan, and I've been using Synology for years. And I'm not ready to abandon my Synology because it's set up and working. But if I were to start over right now, today, March 2025, I go all in on the stuff from UniFi Protect. I have that set up too. I just think UniFi Protect in the latest versions of it are really doing a good job. So yeah, the TrueNAS stuff is just, it's not TrueNAS, but the UniFi stuff has just become really good. And their new cameras, their new AI key is impressive. I don't know. I feel like Synology is like, they have a good working product. It's not a bad product. It's a product that's kept up to date, but it just doesn't have the same feature set that UniFi is building. Matter of fact, the AI key, which I plan to review pretty soon, is kind of next level that I don't see even larger, much more expensive vendors doing some of the features. I mean, there are companies that do it, but they are substantially more expensive than the way UniFi is implementing it for some of the stuff. So yeah, the UniFi's, I think I did that video because I'm impressed with how well UniFi Protect works. Matter of fact, one of the things I commented on, and this is directly from some of my own clients, one of the things that's really impressive is that my clients who have bought the UniFi Protect system, they now have a system that has more features than when they bought it without having to pay subscription fees. That's actually pretty cool. It's in the fact that they can just buy another device that attaches to their existing system and enhances it is a big upsell. That's pretty cool. No license fees, no recurring fees, no, oh, yeah, throw this whole system away. Nope. You can buy this AI key and it's sub $1,000. And that's actually a pretty reasonable price because like the Viking Chemical project, the Enterprise UniFi project I did a video on, that is, and I'm allowed to say their name. This was all permissions I had from the client, but that client is, likes the enhancements that come with these things because they're like, cool, I have all this and now it's better. And that's just kind of neat to me. We got to get you killing bugs in Helldivers too. I might, that game looks fun. I will admit Helldivers definitely looks like a fun game. Have you played BALATRO? My son loves that game. I didn't know that's what it was called. Yeah, my son loves that game. I have not played it. I know he plays it a lot. I bought Elite Dangerous Space Game on Steam. I have limited hand mobility, but I got to try playing my friends. I think you can handle it. Looks cool. Awesome. Yeah, the Helldivers, my son, I don't know if this is still the case. He was having trouble with Helldivers crashing. He was playing it for a little while, but Helldivers looks pretty cool. I got to admit, that one just seems like it's a lot of fun. But part of the other reason I bought a gaming laptop, which is normally not what I know people are probably cringing going, but Tom, desktop gaming's where it's at. I plan to take a few trips and I don't really care as much. I mean, I like online play when I'm here, but I just didn't want to have my gaming system in my studio area like I used to. I want to leave the studio area. I spend a lot of hours down here. I like just being able to go upstairs, and I have a few trips I have planned in my camper. And I'm taking the gaming laptop with me when I go camping because once I'm done, I go out and do outdoor things is why I go camping. But at night, if I'm sitting there by myself, because sometimes I go camping completely solo, I will just play a game on the computer as long as they have electricity. Some of the places I go camping, I don't have hookups. I have solar on my camper, and I'm self-contained, but I don't want to run the inverter. Everything is USB charging and 12 volt when I'm off grid, and I do like going off grid in my camper because it's pleasant to me. I read books. Is UniFi Protect completely free for Infinite Camera, also third-party camera, or just UniFi devices? So they did, and I did a video on this because the way they support third-party cameras is, it works. It can be done. It's not ideal. I don't think their third-party camera support is the best way to go. First-party camera support is, but as far as completely free, oh yeah, they have no license fees attached to it. There's not any recurring fees attached to it. You buy the product, you buy the cameras. And someone can make this argument that, well, Tom, technically the license fees are built into the cameras. And in some ways they are, because our cameras are a little bit expensive. But the cameras are expensive because, and I covered this in my UniFi more recent video I did, I think is in January, the cameras do the processing. The UniFi NVR system doesn't have a ton of processing power because it relies on the cameras to do a lot of the processing of the video. So the cameras have more expense than the NVR, versus some companies put all the processing in the NVR, like Synology. The Synology NVR becomes expensive, but I can use cheaper cameras. In this UniFi world, it's exactly the opposite. I can use a cheaper NVR because their NVR is a little bit less pricey than some of the offerings by other companies, but then the cameras have a higher cost to it. But either way, there's at least not a recurring cost, and all the processing, including all their AI stuff they do, is all local, which I think is great. Can I install XCP-ng on 3 bare metal HP ProLiant DL380 Gen 10 servers for hosts and then install TrueNAS on my Synology? I don't think there's any problem running XCP-ng on an HP ProLiant. I do not know that you can get TrueNAS installed on any Synology, because Synologies are, depending on how good your skills are, Synologies don't have, at least the majority of them don't have any type of VGA or HDMI output. So you would have to hack away through the serial port and set up TrueNAS via output. There are Synologies that are x86 based, so maybe you could get TrueNAS on one. Not easily though. QNAP is actually a little bit easier, as I've been told. I don't have one to validate this, but I think you can find some write-ups on there. Some model QNAPs can be reloaded with TrueNAS, so you can reuse the hardware. But Synology does run NFS. You can set up a Synology with NFS with XCP-ng and it works. What's your current experience with intranets? I don't think we call them intranets anymore, but SharePoint is still a popular solution that I truly think is a ugly disaster. I'm not a big fan of SharePoint, but we do use SharePoint. I am forced to use SharePoint at CNWR. I have to put things there and I have to find them later, which is I have workarounds in my head. I just use the web version of SharePoint. So I don't know. SharePoint's definitely, many businesses are use it. Helldivers crashing, I found to come from Windows default swap size, even 64 gig of RAM, years. Also, I love Division 2. I wish they would come out with a Division 3, because Division 2 got kind of repetitious, and I don't think Ubisoft has been doing a good job of doing it. But Division 2, Division 1 was good, Division 2 was better, but both are great. Raise a 2-gig swap and it seems to be fine. I will check that on my son, because my son's not very technical. He's like, Dad, fix it. I'm like, you should learn how to fix it, son. If I could self-host UniFi Protect so I didn't have to go through their half-baked manual footage archival, save my video, would love to get UniFi cameras. Yeah, you cannot self-host the UniFi Protect software. It's made to run on their hardware. Well, no, technically, there's some people who are reverse engineered running some of the UniFi Protect stuff. I don't know what the status of it is, but it does run on certain processors. I just don't know much about it. I've heard it's in production for a while. I mean, I will buy it if it comes out, because I also remember an expansion pack being mentioned years ago that never came for Division 2. I know they talked about it, and I know there's at least, is it the New York one? There was a couple expansions for Division 2 that I got, but I remember there was supposed to be more that never happened. So there's that. But yeah, the Division, like I said, I great game, but Ubisoft doing their thing. Oh man. Yeah, once you've went through the entire game, even with some friends, it does get a little bit repetitive. So yeah. Try to remind myself, only buy a product for what it does right now, not promises. Oh yeah, that's always the case. It's a bonus when a company actually takes the time to enhance a product after they sell it to you, but the incentive sometimes goes down. Once you've bought the product, why would they fix it? Why would they update it? You've already bought it. So Tom, I know you favor XCPG, but you ever touch the new vGPU official support in Proxmox? Nope. And I don't have an interest in it. I just don't have the number of people requesting that is maybe it's just the customers we have don't need it. We're just not seeing a demand for it. So there's not been a real reason to, and I don't have a use case for it. So I haven't done anything with it. I know if you're doing a bunch of virtualization stuff for, what do you call that? Like where you want to have a bunch of remote desktops, I guess that's a use case for it. But I just don't think, or at least the clients we've had really haven't been requesting that much. So lack of demand is why I would say that, we're not doing it. Wife. So my wife's asking what we're doing today. So I'll say, all right. Cody still around, playing the new Assassin's Creed. It's not a terrible game. Lots of new games coming out this year. Yeah, there's some good games out there. I've been trying to seek them out. My kids, they let me join their private Discord, so now I'm privileged to be in my children and their friends. They've got a group of friends they play with. That's what got me playing Dead by Daylight. Was I was playing with my kids. Any free, easy app to do app to network interface IP bindings? So if I have multiple NICs, I can distribute traffic. I really would need a better idea what you're talking about. Sounds like you're looking for a load balancer. HA proxy can do that, but I have to understand better what you're trying to figure out to do. But generally speaking, if you need to load balance, there is the ability with HA proxy to build it as a load balancer. There's other proxies as well that do this. I've never played any of the Fallout games, but boy, do I like the Netflix series. Game over now, not in the private Discord. Yeah. I also learned I'm kind of Discord dumb. Trying to figure out how Discord works is still hard for me. I poke around until I figure it out. So all I know is my kids made sure I had a microphone and a headset because that way there's no echo or noise coming back. So matter of fact, I have my what is called the aftershocks. I really like these. I had more than one set of them, so the aftershocks are great. I use this even for gaming. I don't like anything that goes over my ears, so I actually have 2 sets of aftershocks. I know you can dual pair them, but that can be a pain because they don't go to the wrong thing. But the aftershocks, these ones are for my phone. This is, or if I'm on calls or Zoom meetings, etc. I use these if I want to wander around. I just don't like things that cover my ears. This is how I consume many of my podcasts when I go for a walk too. How do you fight the urge to want to just buy cool stuff? It's called I'm really cheap. I hate spending money. I'm actually good at saving money because I'm bad at spending it because I'm just I don't like spending money on things. I don't know. I avoid a lot of it. Do you think it's safe to use Nginx Proxy Manager first proxy with port forward? I haven't really found a reason not to. A lot of people do use Nginx Proxy Manager. Now, this was a whole concern people had. In the web interface of Nginx Proxy Manager, people did find some problems, but those problems were in the web interface of Nginx Proxy Manager, and they fixed those problems. These were security issues that came up. That's fine. Don't expose the web interface that manages Nginx Proxy Manager. It's managing Nginx. So Nginx is well known to be public facing and a tool that a lot of people have reverse proxies on, and Nginx is great for that. So Nginx Proxy Manager is just a management tool for that. And so I don't think it's probably a big deal to have port forwarding, but I generally, in the big picture of things, I don't port forward anything because I prefer to put everything behind a VPN because I'm paranoid. Discord bots is actually what got me to poke around with Homelabbing and software. Yeah. I know you don't talk much about OpenSense, but I have been stuck trying to get private VPN failover to a failover WAN. Never got to work on pfSense either. Any pointers would be great. I don't know what you're trying to fail over. You're trying to get your privacy VPN to fail over? I guess I don't understand the question. Traffic is very popular. What is the minimum security scanner you would install on a Linux web server? I don't install security scanners on Linux web servers, so I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. I guess I don't maybe understand the question. I see people definitely like tailscale here. Tomorrow's forecast. Google has this thing they do because I have a Pixel 9 phone where they want to let me know the weather every day. And it's kind of weird that I don't know what it has to do with AI. They call it the AI weather app. It's like built into the phone now. I don't know what it has to do with AI. It's like, it's a weather app. It just tells me what the weather is going to be tomorrow. Is that really an AI summary? I don't know. Hey, thank you very much. Gifted some memberships. That is greatly appreciated. Yeah, Gemini just kind of does its thing. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Google's like, they're all all these AI companies are trying to come up with an idea and trying to come up with a use case to make us use it, but none of them really have like the killer app. Matter of fact, Apple Intelligence has been hysterical more than anything else. Like, it's kind of a failure in terms of the way it's supposed to summarize things. And there's an entire subreddit dedicated to how poorly it does trying to summarize text messages, which are already short and summarized. It just kind of does dumb things. I always have 2 weather notifications on my phone, and it's just like, yeah. Actually, I realized I didn't let it renew. There's a weather app I like quite a bit called Shadow Weather. Shadow Weather is actually really neat. It will give you these lightning maps. I think are really cool. So if you want to know in storms here in the Midwest, the greater Detroit area that I live in, are sometimes a lot of lightning storms, and it's kind of neat to watch the map move and see all the lightning go. So the app is worth paying for, in my opinion, because it gives me cool lightning and weather maps, and it's kind of cool to watch things. It gives you a lot of stats. I think Google might be in the best position to monetize their AI solution. It's it's hard to monetize these because even what they're charging, it costs them too much money. They're losing money on every transaction they do, and none of it's impressive. None of it's like, oh my gosh, this is the most needed thing. They're almost like trying to figure out a way to make it needed. Copilot. And now I will admit, we use a tool called fireflies.ai, and it does a decent job. I have not really tested the Google one, and I haven't tested the Copilot one, but some of the meeting summary tools are okay. Like sometimes meetings are pain, and meetings are way longer than they should be. And having a AI tool that summarizes all the long meetings. Matter of fact, I like that it summarizes the meetings I wasn't in. My salespeople will sometimes have these long conversations with clients, and I could just read the AI summary and then go, oh, okay, now I know you guys were there for 30 minutes and this is all you talked about. Great. I find an action item in there. And the cool thing about Firefly's AI is I can hit playback on the action item, or it'll play the actual recording in the meeting. So I can confirm that it didn't misunderstand what someone said. That's fantastic. It's all nicely transcribed. I know the action item that came out of a meeting. I didn't have to spend 30 minutes to an hour in a meeting. I found a 32-second sound clip of the actual action I'm supposed to take. Ah, wandering out of there. Rephrasing. What security tool is a must have on Linux hosts, generally speaking? Just hardening it. That's the biggest thing, is just harden a Linux server. Remove all the things you don't need. Follow all the best practices. I talked about firewalling earlier. Like set all the firewall on and only implicit and whatever. Open only the port you need and no more. That is the biggest thing that I really encourage people. Just don't load everything on there. A solution without a problem. Yes. Yeah, let me silence the noise that's in here. Where did it go? I'm a software engineer and agentic AI tools. I barely have to write my own code anymore. Fuzzy on that. Oh, yes. Disable login on your Linux server. Only allow SSH. Absolutely. Huge on that one. So, Marcus, people suggested when I said I was playing games, my son had wandered in, for those that didn't notice the background. Balataro, is that how you say it?
That's the one I recommended you.
Yeah. People are telling me I should be playing that.
It's so good. It's so much fun.
I'll add it to my wish list. I just let my son know that I added he says this one's so much fun I should end. So it's now on my Steam wish list.
It's the game of the year nominee.
Is it? It's a game of the year nominee? Really?
Made by one guy.
Huh. Do you think it's worth buying secondhand rack servers for Homelab with the intent to learn and practice? With the energy bill going to infinity and beyond, it's a concern. Honestly, the mini PCs are great. And I think you can do, outside of the physical playing with server hardware, which is kind of fun, the mini PCs are solid. You can do a great job with them. You can learn a lot with them and they work well. A friend of mine got the Jet KVM, apparently promise kept on making code open source. People say no backdoors. There's even a project for colalts. Yeah. The whole thing is awesome. I'm happy with everything about the Jet KVM. Do you want food? Is that why you're here?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll be done soon and I'll get you food. Are you done eating pepperoni rolls? You've consumed all the pepperoni rolls.
They are gone.
My son ate an entire week's worth of pepperoni rolls.
They are so good.
I have a question about TrueNAS. I want to install on my mini PC eMCC memory to free the M2 slots for pool. Yeah, it should work on the eMMC. Is there a way to make TrueNAS log somewhere else? Ooh, I think some of the logs, but not all the logs, will go somewhere else. And that, I don't know that the EMM people overhype eMMCs dying. It's not that it can't happen. It's just not likely. Because the newer EMCs are not the old. There's plenty of actual people having problems with old eMMCs. It's 100% legit. But eMMCs have improved because technology moves forward generally. And the moving forward means we have better, more durable eMMC here today in 2025 than we did previously. But that's so yeah, it will do some of it, but I have my own. Hold on. I'm going to share some vibe coding with people. Tom has opinions on vibe coding, so he posts them on here. So here is my vibe coding meme I will drop with people. So yeah. So I will spend, let me zoom it out. So AI wrote 10K lines of code in 2 minutes. Now I'll spend 2 years fixing bugs, code bloat, and security. But if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, I have plenty of ranting about things occasionally. LinkedIn's my go-to place to rant about topics. So I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. You can follow me and you will see me occasionally rant on topics such as vibe coding. I want to build a NAS, but can't decide which setup to do in TrueNAS, or not sure how many drives to buy. As many as you can afford is usually the answer. That's the stopping point most of the time is what the budget is, not what you, it's not about want. It's almost about like budgets aren't unlimited. I use Ansible for security hardening across servers, ensures consistency, simplifies the process, and helps prevent anything from being overlooked. Ansible is nice. I 100% agree with that topic. Once you get good at learning Ansible, you can start building machines with a consistency and making sure that you do things in a completely predictable manner. Matter of fact, if you ever have to rebuild a server, if you get good at having Ansible be that build tool, you can now make a repeatable server each time. It's like, I don't know why the server broke. Let's build it again with Ansible. It's a lot to learn, but it's worth learning. I mean, do you want to put a web application firewall in front of it? That's why I said it's not really, there's not like any magic sauce to it. I mean, if you wanted to use some of the security tooling from like SentinelOne, they offer security tooling that will work on there. There's a lot of large commercial companies that offer Linux tools to monitor security. I don't know how good any of them are. I don't use them generally. I don't trust. In the case of CrowdStrike, especially in Linux, they were the problem. I have a 3X mini PC cluster, I think. Talking about Proxmox and running it partially got me current job. Yeah. mini PCs are a great way to learn virtualization, whether it's XCP-ng, Proxmox, Kubernetes, whatever you want to set up. Setting up on a mini PC, the knowledge you gain can apply to the enterprise as well, because the concepts are still the same. Even though they're really scaled down, it works the same way at scale. You just have, well, you think a little bit differently when things are at scale, but you get the concepts down by learning it that way. Ever know pepperoni rolls are gamers' best? Yeah. I think he wants something other than pepperoni rolls today. Would love to hear range about quantum computer development. Oh, it's one of those quantum computer development. Next year, for the last 15 years, it's going to be the next big thing. I do not, but my business partner Jason was the package maintainer for Puppet, so we do use it at my company. But I'm not a Puppet or Chef user myself. I've heard of Foreman. I've never used it. Someone there's an argument online with me about Foreman with someone. Someone was mad because they wanted XCP-ng to write the code so they could use Foreman with their deployments, but didn't want to fund the coding for it. And as a matter of fact, they were using all the free stuff for XCP-ng at a company large enough to have hundreds of hosts, but then were complaining that XCP-ng should do it for free and he shouldn't have to spend money on updating the software. It was a dumb argument back and forth. And even the people at XCP-ng are like, well, if you're using this in a commercial business that makes money, probably you should buy, maybe you should buy some licenses, or maybe you'd like to donate to help develop the software. And he goes, you guys should just do it because it would make your software better to do it. I don't know. That's the only time I've ever heard of Foreman. I've never actually used it though. I wish he liked burgers. That'd make my life easier. There's a really good smash burger place not far from me. Any plans to talk about OpenShift as an option to replace VMware? Nope. I just don't use OpenShift, so no. My wife went to her friend's house to eat. That was our message back and forth. She wants to, she's just going over her friends who lives down the street. But such is life. I do need to go eat myself. There's some food here for me. My wife is going to hang out with her friend. I think there's food upstairs for me. I got to go get, and I got to get my son some food. So 2.5 hours seems like a good enough time to cut this off. Thank you everyone for joining. Head over to forums.lawrencesystems.com to have a more in-depth discussion, because some of these questions I can only answer the basics by which you asked it. But if you have a more in-depth question, forums is a place you'll find me. Homelab@lawrencesystems.com if you want to just ping me or reach out for some reason. And I mentioned before my Steam. My name in Steam is Lawrence Systems. Not hard to find. I threw the link in here somewhere. So yeah, easy enough to find it. I just spent the last 20 minutes fixing my Nginx proxy manager after I updated. Thank you, ChatGPT, and knowing I need to move database files. Fun times for sure. Always have a backup before you update. That's generally my advice. All right. Thanks, everyone, and take care.